is putting undue pressure on the Fed, and there are people like President Trump and myself who think that if a Fed official committed mortgage fraud, that this should be examined, and that they shouldn't be serving as one of the nation's leading financial regulators. And what we haven't heard from Ms. Cook is we haven't heard her say, "I didn't do it." We haven't heard her say, "I didn't do it." She just keeps saying the president can't remove her. The other thing, too, that I have called in the recent past for an internal review of all the Fed's operations, and I've encouraged Chair Powell to do this on an internal basis before there is an external review. And this is the kind of thing that needs to be addressed, because the Fed is an unaccountable institution, and its relationship with the American people depends on a high level of trust. And incidents like this puncture that trust. So President Trump is trying to make sure that anyone who serves at this institution has the trust of the American people.
Papers for a decade, and she's obsessed with pronouns.
How can principles of economics instructors incorporate more diversity into their classroom?
I think the first way to do it is to look at the textbooks. Last time I talked to Paul Krugman and Robin Wells about their textbooks, they were negotiating with the publisher to use gender-neutral pronouns.
But there's one thing she loves more than pronouns: calling Trump a dictator.
My European friends told me before Trump was elected not to make fun of what was happening, to take very seriously what was happening, because they've had recent skirmishes with fascism. They know the impact of fascism, and this guy is definitely a fascist and embraces that.
When Lisa got cooked, Wall Street didn't even blink. The market's up, and the DEI hangover's over. But the Panicans went full Pelosi.
Can I have that letter?
Sure.
This is Donald Trump's letter. Do you know what Lisa Cook should do? What Nancy Pelosi did. She should tear that letter. Now you'll need to tape it for the rest of the segment. That letter is worthless.
The DEI holdout isn't going to win this fight. She might be handcuffing herself to Powell, who said today, look, the court says she's fired. She's fired. Trump's already interviewing for a replacement, but the media is mad that he went digging.
Government by digging into the mortgage records of officials you don't like.
No, they're public. I mean, you can find out those records. You can go check out the records yourself. And you should be doing that job, actually. You wouldn't do that because that's not the kind of reporter you are. But you should be doing that job. I shouldn't have to be doing it. If you did your job properly, we wouldn't have problems like Lisa Cook.
Now, for those who think I'm being hypercritical or racist for pointing out that Lisa Cook is a classic, incompetent, corrupt DEI appointee in government service, do you know she has a PhD in economics, Andrew? Yeah, I'm aware. First of all, it's not a PhD in monetary policy, which is what the Fed does. It's a PhD in racist economics. Racist economics. Let's take a look at the kind of academic research that she's done. Maybe that would be informative to us. What is Lisa Cook known for as an economist? Let's take a look. A strong emphasis on how racial violence, segregation, and discrimination have historically impacted economic outcomes, particularly for African Americans and underrepresented groups. It's all DEI. It's all racial grievance industrial complex. There's racism happening here. It's not by me. It's by Lisa Cook. Lisa Cook. Her most cited scholarly work explores how racial violence, such as lynchings and riots, suppressed innovation and economic participation among African Americans. Her 2014 paper, Violence and Economic Activity, Evidence from African American Patents, 1870 to 1940, demonstrates that patenting rates among Black inventors dropped significantly in response to mass violence. Why have African Americans made so little contribution to the science of America? It's not because of any kind of inherent qualification. It's white people. White people made them do it. Of course. Of course. She's also co-authored papers like Racial Segregation and Southern Lynching, Rural Segregation and Racial Violence. She's 100% a DEI racist economist. That's what she does. What part of any of this prepares her to serve on the board of governors on the Federal Reserve? Absolutely nothing. And as I've demonstrated in other shows over and over again, DEI requires the destruction of competence. You cannot have DEI without destroying competence. It is impossible. Impossible. And of course, that's what we have here. How can someone who's on the board of the Federal Reserve be so corrupt as to commit felony fraud on mortgage applications, or alternatively, be so incompetent, a PhD in economics, appointed by President Biden to be on the board of governors of the Federal Reserve, yet so incompetent that she does not know what she's signing at closing on personal real property? Shouldn't that incompetence alone qualify as cause for removal of her? How are the American people, for a position that has a 14-year appointment, we are stuck with her for 3.5 presidential administrations? She was only appointed 2 years ago. So she's got 12 years left on her term until she was fired for cause by the president. How are the American people supposed to have trust in the member of the board of governors of the Federal Reserve that sets the interest rates that determine how much they pay for a mortgage, how much they pay for a car, how much they pay on their credit cards, how much they earn on their savings, how much their nation pays on trillions of dollars in national debt, when there's credible evidence this miscreant has personally engaged in mortgage fraud? Not just on 2 properties, like the 2 sets of signatures I just showed you, but now there's a third property. Trump administration official Pulte has been taking a particular interest in Lisa Cook on behalf of the administration. 3 strikes and you're out, he writes. Today, U.S. Federal Housing sent a second criminal referral to the Department of Justice for Lisa D. Cook. I guess the D must stand for DEI, related to a mortgage on yet a third property and alleged misrepresentation about her properties to the United States government during her time as a governor of the Federal Reserve. As we'll see, one of Lisa Cook's defenses is, listen, even if I committed mortgage fraud, that happened before I was a governor on the Federal Reserve Board. So that shouldn't be used against me. That shouldn't be a basis for firing me for cause from the Federal Reserve. As if you can manage to get appointed and hide all your crimes, well, that's it. It's a blank slate. Those can never, if she'd robbed a bank, if she'd committed DWI homicide, if she'd shot her husband through the back of the head, none of that could be used as cause to remove her from the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve if it occurred prior to her appointment, according to her. But now we have a third case of malfeasance that occurred while she was on the board of the Federal Reserve. On April 7, 2021, Cook entered a 15-year mortgage for a condo in Cambridge, Massachusetts, representing it as her second home. Only 8 months later, she signed an ethics form with the U.S. government that this property was an investment, rental property. In later filings, she consistently listed it as an investment property, not a second home. Representing the property as a second home may have allowed Cook to secure a lower second home mortgage down payment and rates. as investment properties typically carry higher down payments, higher rates due to increased risk. And by the way, I've seen credible reporting that Lisa Cook would not have financially qualified for an investment property loan. So the only way for her to secure an investment property with a federally backed mortgage was to lie about it. Additionally, Cook allegedly misrepresented her Atlanta, Georgia property from 2022 to 2025 to the U.S. government as her residence, despite evidence it was being rented out to tenants. She also declared in 2025, while she's serving on the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, 2025 government filing, that her Ann Arbor, Michigan property was her personal reference, but it was also being used as a rental property. These inconsistencies appear Cook made additional multiple false representations, including to the U.S. government, regarding the status of her mortgages and properties while she was serving as a governor on the board of the Federal Reserve. James Fishback has been doing a lot of coverage on Lisa Cook. In fact, he filed an amicus brief with the federal court overseeing her complaint about being fired. Maybe we'll take a look at that. Maybe not. Depends on how it may be covered by other filings we will be looking at. But he writes, the September Fed meeting is just 2 weeks away, and we may actually need U.S. Supreme Court to block Lisa Cook from trying to show up to the meeting to vote after she's been fired and just refused to be fired. This is the kind of chaos you'd expect in a third world African country, not in the United States of America. Let's see. Yesterday, during the members only show in the afternoon, by the way, the afternoon shows are members only. If you're not yet a member on YouTube, you may want to consider, you get twice as much of all this in the afternoon shows, doubles our show content, but it's for members only 16 cents a day. The link is in the description. $5 a month to be a member, folks. We covered her complaint against Trump, her filing in federal court saying he's not allowed to fire me. It was pathetic. I covered it at length in yesterday's members only show in the afternoon. Since then, she filed a separate argument with the court for a temporary restraining order, restraining Trump from firing her, which is weird because it's already happened. In her complaint that we covered yesterday, not once in the 14-page complaint does she ever say, I didn't do it. Did she ever say Trump's allegation of cause, what I did wrong, is false? She never denies the allegation, which is astonishing because you would think the cleanest defense against a firing for cause is to be able to point and say, the cause doesn't exist. It's a fabrication. And cause is required under statute for firing a governor of the Federal Reserve. So if the cause is imaginary, if Trump just fabricated it, well, that would seem to be a solid basis for getting a court to say the firing's illegitimate. Of course, she knows that Trump has this, doesn't she? Makes things a little awkward. So in her complaint in federal court, she never says, it wasn't me. Then later in the day, she filed a motion for a temporary restraining order, another 14 pages of argument, and I guess she saw her error. I wasn't the only person who noticed that she never denied the accusation of mortgage fraud. In her TRO filing, she says, well, it may have happened, but if it happened, it was just an innocent mistake. First time she's acknowledging this hot mess. Can we accept that a governor on the board of the Federal Reserve responsible for setting interest rates for the entire nation, both as a nation and for every individual within our great country? Oops, I just happened to make a mistake that's a federal felony that has clear and massive financial benefits for me. Innocent error. Even if you believed her, and it's not believable, wouldn't it be grotesque incompetence? We'll come back to that in a moment. Shipwrecked crew, I cover him. He's a former federal prosecutor, January 6th defender. I quote him quite a lot here. He was listening to a bit of Cook's request for a TRO. That was the hearing this morning that was accessible by telephone. He was listening in. Cook's lawyer, Abe Lowell, absolutely floundering in trying to make a coherent argument. The figurative, he's throwing everything at the wall, hoping that something will stick. So it certainly doesn't look like things went well for Lisa Cook in her hearing this morning. Now, even if Lisa Cook gets the TRO, normally a temporary restraining order is not appealable because it's only supposed to last for 2 weeks. And the appellate courts say, well, you know, by the time we could hear an appeal, 2 weeks would be over anyway. Call us back if it gets converted to a preliminary injunction, which is durable for the duration of the litigation. Obviously, a lot of these TROs issued against Trump are issued as TROs specifically to try to hamper his ability to appeal. But he has appealed TROs even all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has heard them when the TRO is obviously really a preliminary injunction in effect. And with the Open Market Committee, the Federal Reserve Committee meeting happening in less than 2 weeks, there's obviously a rational argument to be made for treating this TRO, should it issue, and I expect it would, given the judge. The judge is another lawfare judge against Trump. We've seen her before. She also, by the way, the judge assigned to this case, maybe I have an image. So here's Lisa Cook. We've seen that picture before. Here's the judge assigned to the case. By the way, Lisa Cook and the judge were both members of the same sorority in college, not at the same time. I don't even know if they ever met or know each other, but they were members of the same sorority. And here's the court clerk that magically assigned this woman's case to this judge. That assignment was done by this court clerk. I know you think I'm making this shit up. I'm really not. I'm really not. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. They could all be sisters. They all went to the same Waffle House. Got served by Justice Ketanji Waffle House Jackson. Let's see. Yeah, a big part of the argument that Cook and her lawyers are raising here is that, we have to treat her differently from these other agency heads that the Supreme Court has allowed Trump to fire, so-called independent agencies, just like the Federal Reserve is an independent agency. The Supreme Court has said you're allowed to fire those people. Gwynne Wilcox, Kathy Harris, Hampton Dellinger of the Country Club Dellingers. These were all agency heads that protested being fired by Trump. And by the time it got to the Supreme Court said, no, Trump can fire those people. So why can't he fire Lisa Cook? Lisa Cook says, well, the Federal Reserve is different. And the Supreme Court itself has said the Federal Reserve is different. Unfortunately for Lisa Cook, the way the Federal Reserve is different in this context, firing for cause, is favorable to Trump and not favorable to Lisa Cook. We'll see that in just a moment when we look at her TRO filing, I imagine. Let's see. Okay. With that background out of the way, we got 7 more super chats. Holy cow. All right. Before I jump into the Lisa Cook's argument for why she should get a temporary restraining order, effectively an order from an Article 3 unelected black robe tyrannical inferior district trial court judge, federal district trial court judge, assuming the authority to tell the Article 2 executive branch president that he's not allowed to fire a subordinate. That's what the order would be. That the judge, the federal judge, is supplanting the authority of the president of the United States. Because, first of all, if the president cannot fire a member of the Federal Reserve, who can? There is a Federal Reserve Act, a statute of Congress that creates the Federal Reserve. The only person listed who can fire a Federal Reserve governor is the president. It does say for cause, but it's the president. It's not Congress. It's not a judge. So if the argument is the president can't fire these people either, who can fire them? Because anybody who can't be fired who's a government official is simply a tyrant. They're completely unaccountable to the will of the American people. And that's especially egregious given these Federal Reserve appointments are 14 years long. Not a year, 2 years, 4 years, 14 years. Who are they accountable to in that 14-year period? Nobody. And that's not even getting to the point that all of these so-called independent agencies are constitutionally illegitimate. The Constitution only has 3 branches of government, folks. Article 1 legislative, Article 2 executive, Article 3 judicial. There is no Article 4 independent agency branch of government. I know we've created dozens of these things. The Federal Reserve is just the most egregious of them. That doesn't make it legitimate. Under our constitutional order, they're all illegitimate. The EPA, the Federal Reserve, all of them. And this is an issue that's been coming up repeatedly in these firing cases. If these so-called independent agencies, if the president can't fire them and nobody else can, there is no accountability to the political will of the American people. And then we're just living in a tyranny. That's not the nation our founders created. Our founders could have included in the Constitution Article 4, independent agencies. There's a reason they didn't. They could have included Article 5, Federal Reserve. We're going to treat that one differently. Nobody can be fired. There's a reason they didn't.
Thanks for watching this highlight segment of our full-length Law of Self-Defense live stream. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to give us a like and subscribe for more expert analysis on politics, law, and how to be hard to convict. And to watch the full-length episode of this show, just click right here. Stay safe.